Okay. Ready.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the February 2024 edition of the Washington County Committee for Community Involvement monthly meeting. Welcome. We have a pretty nicely full agenda tonight. And without any further ado, I would like to turn the mic over to Amanda Garcia Snell to give us an update on things from the Office of Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement. So thank you, Amanda, for coming to our meeting tonight, and we look forward to what you have to share.
Hey, thanks, Bruce, and thanks everyone for having me. So sounds like you were interested in hearing about 3 different things, and I'll share those things, and then if there are questions, I'm happy to answer or figure out what the next step is to getting you an answer for those
Very
things.
good. Thank you. Yeah.
So the first thing that I wanted to touch on was the recruitment for the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. I think hopefully everyone knows that Latricia Tillman, who was our inaugural Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, left in last summer, and we have been working on a recruitment plan with a consultant and moving through that process that included some stakeholder interviews and revisions of the job posting and all the things that go along with the bureaucracy of hiring a executive level position in local government. So now we are at the place where the position was posted earlier this month, and we initially were going to have it close at the end of this month. I think we're going to leave it open for a little while longer. So far, we have 192 applicants, so we're leaving it open not because we don't have enough applicants, but because of spring break timing, we aren't really going to be able to get to the beginning of the interview process until later than anticipated. And so instead of closing it and just having something out there, we thought we would leave it open and let folks know that we're seeing some action a little bit. So the plan is to close it later in March, and then go through the consultant that we're working with is going through those applicants. We will probably winnow that down at least to 20% or so, and then we'll look at doing a first round of screening, and there will be a multi-layered. Oh, sorry, Virginia. Let me get closer to my speaker. Does that help?
Oh, is that the same mic you usually use?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just in my office.
I mean, I'm deaf, so I'm not a good judge. Is anybody else having difficulty understanding everything?
It's a little bit choppy.
Kind of fuzzy, but if that's fine, I'll just do my best.
Okay, yeah, let me know if you need me to repeat something or if I can type something to you.
So far, so good.
Okay.
And I did ask if we have chat, because that was the setting that we started using a month or so ago, chat enabled for the participants. I mean, the attendees.
I don't know.
Because right now it's only showing for me, it's showing hosts and panelists and not everyone. But that means we all have to watch out who we're chatting to.
Well, so the chat, that's kind of a tricky, and this is a little bit of a side thing, but I'll just mention this. That's something that we're working on with our public meetings compliance. And
yeah.
I know there are questions that you all had posed in a memo that we're still working on, or that our county council is still working on response to around public meetings law in relation to CCI and CPOs. So what we're doing with other public meetings is disabling the chat completely. We're still trying to get clear guidance about what is allowed. It's possible that enabling the chat for everyone also covers that, but we're still working out. The issue is that if chat's only available to hosts and panelists, then it doesn't comply with meeting law. So
okay, you're saying either or, that it's either everybody or nobody?
Yeah, that's what they're what they're working on, figuring out.
I'm
So
all for everybody, but we'll see. Thank you. I'm sorry to distract from your presentation, but these
Is
are,
that a county ordinance or something, or what?
public meeting law is state, it's the state that governs the public meeting law, and they
yeah,
once the pandemic happened, there were lots of changes that happened to the public meeting law. Some of those were temporary in relation to the governor's emergency declaration. We were able to do some things that we couldn't do before, like have online meetings, which wasn't in total compliance with the public meeting law in the past. Had to be in person or by a phone. So there's still some transition, I think, some catching up with that, and with having the online meetings opens up, lots of other questions. So I think there's still some consideration about how to interpret the piece around comments, or that everyone can see the comments. So more to come on that. Okay, so we'll hopefully start the first phase of that interview process for the Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer position in later in the first or in the early part of April, I think is where we're looking. We just met today, so still working out some of those details with the dates. And then with the idea that we'll be able to hopefully extend an offer to someone in May. And so then it just depends on, when that happens and where they're coming from and how much time they need in order to cut fully on board. But we're getting really good response, and we're hopeful that that will find some great candidates. So that's the update for that. The CPO update, I wish I had more to tell you than I have, but as you know, this started in 2021 with the re-envisioning conversation. We took some proposed areas for further analysis and consideration to the board. They said yes. We came back to them about a year plus later, and they said, well, let's think about this more. And that's kind of where it's been. So there's been lots of conversation about the resolution and orders that really created the CPO, or officially created the CPO. I know there were active CPOs prior to the 1986 resolution and order that we still have in place today, but there's a lot of outdated language in there. There's a lot of things related to OSU extension that we haven't had a contractual relationship with for this work since before I came into this role in 2018. And so there's lots of opportunity there to update that. We are still in the process of the legal analysis of that. Within that resolution and order 8658, it's not just CPO and CCI, but also in there are boards and commissions and board town halls. And so we do things really differently than how they were outlined in 1986. And so we just continue to work through that resolution and order and what is the best course of action to update it, or to make amendments to it, or to have a new resolution and order. I mean, it's just an ongoing conversation. Added into that conversation is the memo that you submitted around the public meeting rules, and how this CCI and CPO relate, or how the public meeting rules relate to CCI and CPO. And so that is also included in the analysis that County Council can make to do. And I see, yes.
Amanda, do you have a feeling for when we might be expecting an answer? Because a lot of stuff is tied up in the county council's response to that.
Yeah, Bruce, I don't at this point. So I'm sure you all noticed that we just kept pushing out the CPO update
Yeah, that's right.
on the board agenda, and now it's not on the board agenda at all. And so I'm still waiting for a bit more direction about how are we moving forward with that. And I'm sure as the they work through that resolution order, we'll be coming back to you all with more questions and conversations, and some potentially some clarification about the elements of that.
So my advice to my fellow CPO leaders is that it's steady as she goes. Basically, we're doing the stuff that we do, the service provider updates, and then subjects on the agenda. I don't necessarily want to go into any particulars on it, but there have been a couple of instances in CPO agendas where the county council has weighed in on the appropriateness of a subject, and that certainly is almost, I would say, confusing, given the new scrutiny that we've just recently gotten. And so we're very interested in knowing what the new protocol for reviewing agenda topics is. And I don't, and so Mary, what do you got for this?
So one of the questions I have is that this whole process seems to be county staff driven, and with the staff essentially deciding what the program needs to be. And to me, it's a little curious that you haven't gone to the volunteers to find out what is really working in the program. And will there ever be an opportunity for us as volunteers to provide input to the county?
So far, nothing has been done in terms of, I mean, we took to the board some ideas about, can we have approval to look at leveling boundaries and what that could look like? Do we have approval to look at updating the resolution and order? Can we have approval to combine the engagement for revision to the CPO program with the strategic plan? All of those things, none of those things have happened, right? Since that time, they said, yes, you can have approval to look into those things. We looked into one of those 4 elements, which was to conduct an analysis of the other, all of the other jurisdictions in the state and how they comply with goal 1, what they do to comply with goal 1. So that looks different in all different jurisdictions on how they have, what their CCI looks like, that sort of thing. So all of those other pieces, we have, the direction that we have now is to look at that resolution and order and get a legal analysis on that. And so that's where we're at.
Which I understand, but it's, as volunteers, we can also look at that resolution order and say, this is something we've never done. This is, we could give you feedback on, what we have been implementing and what has really worked for us and make suggestions. But
yeah,
to go through the whole analysis of the legal analysis when there are things that we know won't work, or we have always wished that, yes, we would really like to see that implemented, or we've tried that and we know it won't work.
right. And so for the resolution and order, absolutely. That's what I was just saying a minute ago to Bruce, that once the legal analysis is, or the county council gets to a certain point, then we will be coming back to you with more conversation about that resolution and order, for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Virginia, what do you got?
Well, I would just like to ask Amanda if this is possible, just in the interim, if you could give us some guidance about which of our programs is likely to be eligible, if you have a clue, or if it just maybe it drops on your head too. But if you have a prior clue about what is going to trigger some of one of our presenters or whoever from censoring our agendas. I mean, it feels like censoring. I know it's not. Sorry, Bruce.
I wish I had a better answer for you, Virginia, but I did, after the last questions were raised about, or concern was raised about a CPO agenda, I asked for some clarifying statement. And I'll let you know as soon as I have one to share.
Oh, good. I'm sorry that you're in the dark too, but just for people who didn't know about, I think it's 4 or 5 agendas now in a row have been edited, but because they've been sent back to whoever at what agency. I mean, we did a thing on the library and it's all perfectly innocuous, but even that got censored. So.
Well, I think Mary's approach that she recommended of
I
sending,
agree.
and
We send it out first. Yeah.
we've always tried to get the agency doing the presentation to provide the statement on what they're going to talk about.
Yeah, we used
And
to
I
do
think that's a good,
yardstick.
best practice that, if you, I mean, part of the problem is
Right. But it
when-
would be helpful if we had a cheat sheet, and it looks like it'll help all of us. Thank you, Amanda.
So in the interim, until there's more to share about an update or more clarification about what is the direction from for us, for staff, we still have the service level agreement in place. And when we put that in place with the service level agreement with CCI, when we put that in place, the language I think we used said it was an interim service level agreement that would be in place until re-envisioning it. And so it's still the level of service that we provide to you. And I think that was a long process that we worked on together with Linda to be clear about what we do and what you all are able to do.
I'm trying to keep my spirits up, but sometimes it feels like we're rearranging deck chairs.
Mary, what do you got?
A service level agreement for CCI. We do not have a service level agreement for the CPO.
Correct.
It was my understanding when we were going through the CCI process that there would be one for the CPO. Is that not happening, or is that on the to-do list, or what's the status of that?
So it's not on a list at this point. It's just kind of hanging out there with what is the grand plan. So what revisions are going to happen to the RNO? Is that what we're doing? Are we revising that? Are CCI and CPO subject to public meeting law? Like, it's kind of caught up in that, in all of those questions that are still being figured out.
And you do understand, as CPO leaders, that kind of leaves us in the dark as to, what sort of support we can expect, and, it makes it difficult for us to move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's status quo, Mary. Like, we're still continuing to do the status quo. What's listed on the website is still the stuff that we continue to provide. We have new CPOs activating, and we're continuing to provide that same level of support to them as well. And we have sort of this menu of what we can provide. Not every CPO leader needs or wants the same level of support. And so as we have new staff come on board, so Ika, who you are meeting and working with, it also has a slate of CPOs that she's liaising with. And so she's learning the ropes there. Sam is back after her extended leave. And so she's picking up, and we're trying to just continue to keep on keeping on with how we are, able to provide what we can provide to CPOs.
Yep. Okay, let's, Mary, do you have another one, or are your hand still up? Boom, boom, boom. Let's assume that that's a hand still up.
That is still a hands up. I pushed the wrong button and my screen disappeared. So we are still down one coordinator. When can we expect that person to be hired?
So one of the things that I've been trying to do with that position is work on a reclassification so that we can have an additional supervisory support for the community engagement team. So currently, I have 9 people that report to me directly, and that is a lot when I also have program work that I need to do. So it's just working on some of that internal structure. If I can't get that approval, then we will fill that position as a program coordinator, and we'll have the 3rd program coordinator. But that has been the holdup with that 3rd position for this entire time, like mostly.
And I think that's interesting because I think one of the messages that we've tried to send forward as CPO leaders is that we need more clerical type support. And that apparently is not anything that is in the works.
Well, we aren't adding more admin support staff to the OEICE team. We're not adding any new positions at all. So we still have 2.5 admin support staff, and of that, I think I'm just doing the math in my head, but I think it's 0.8 FTE that's assigned in admin support to CPOs. So you get half of a program specialist and a third of a senior administrative support person, and then you have 0.75 of coordinators.
I don't think you understood my question, because we are talking about 0.25, so a total of 0.75 program coordinators. And it sounds like you want to take one of those program coordinators and upgrade it to a more supervisory position. And what I'm asking is couldn't we take that person and actually hire somebody at the administrative level, administrative support level, as opposed to supervisory? And I can understand, you're overwhelmed, but it doesn't seem like we are getting the support that we need. It seems like, well, I think some of us are frustrated, but it is what it is.
Yeah, I hear what you're asking. I mean, I think that the clarification is that even if I am able to reclass that 0.25 program coordinator support, to transition that into an admin support, like there isn't extra admin support. And since the CPO and CCI is one piece of what community engagement does, I wouldn't be able to, and we're not going to hire somebody at a quarter ton. The county doesn't do that, for one. But that's also it wouldn't meet the larger need of all of OEICE. So I think it's, that the blanket is too small. Like, I get that. And that's not only felt by CPOs and CCI.
Okay, let's thank you. That's a good point. Mary, Virginia, what do you got?
Yeah, so I totally endorse what Mary said. And what I'd like to put out for your consideration is that the next person that we hire doesn't hate doing admin work and doesn't see that as secondary to their job. I know that they're skilled in OEICE, in diversity stuff, and that's great. But as Mary said, we need people to write things and email things and keep track of lists and stuff. And
I would like
to say that for your.
I would like to interject there. Thank you, Virginia. That is a subject that I think that the CCI should take up in our steering committee meeting tomorrow to identify what are the items of support. Virginia, did you go? Oh, there you are.
Gosh, haven't we done that 10 or 12 times already?
It's still not.
Well, let's collate them and put them together.
Yes, do. So we got a steering committee meeting subject. Okay, Paul, what do you got?
Some of these distinctions are going over my head to how the title or role of a particular person is going to be. Well, from my point of view, I look at what my local CPO can do and cannot do for itself. And when you talk about support, among the things that I see needed are the ability to get the word out as to what's going on. It's that simple. If you can't get the word out about what's going on, people will not show up.
Yeah, I
Okay.
agree with you.
Okay, Amanda, why don't you continue on your subjects?
Sure. So I just want to I just want to elevate the comment that Jim put in the chat. He asked why the resolution in order for CPO program has not been updated for over 6 years. And then he also added that according to the land use law, citizens are supposed to be involved in all steps of the planning process. I just want to clarify, Jim, that the resolution in order hasn't been updated since 1986. So much longer than 6 years. And as to why, I don't know. But that's why we're starting to talk about that now, because a lot of the language is outdated, and doesn't apply to what you all do and want to do and are able to do, and it doesn't apply to what we are doing either. So lots of opportunity there. Okay, so then the last piece is about the budget. So we're starting to work on the fiscal year 24-25 budget. So we operate on I think you all know this, but just in case you don't, we operate on a fiscal year that starts on July 1 to June 30. So on July 1 of 2024, we'll have a new budget. And that is a long involved process, and we are at the beginning stage of that, where departments are putting forth a draft budget to their designated assistant county administrators. The assistant county administrators will review those, and there will be a lot of back and forth about clarifications and questions and what about this and what about that, and then the final versions of the budget will be put together in a draft, the final draft that will go to the budget committee process, and then there will be deliberations like that, and then eventually the commissioners will adopt the budget. They have to adopt the budget before the end of the fiscal year, and so that's sort of the very nutshell of what's going on. The other pieces of that is similar to last year, where departments were asked to put together a budget with cut scenarios. Last year it was 4%, 7%, and 10% cuts. So this year we've been asked to do 3% and 5% cut scenarios. So what that means is that in OEIC, which has 3 buckets, funding buckets, one of which is the CPO bucket. We talked about, Mary and I talked about this, and I know the knows about that you maybe not civic engagement bucket, because it is more than CPO, and CPO and our civic leadership training contracts. So so I am working on putting together those cut scenarios. Because the CPO program is lottery funded, we're hoping to not have to do any cut scenario for that particular budget bucket of the OEICE, but we will be doing 3% and 5% cut scenarios for the main community engagement budget and the activity budget, which are all part of the OEICE larger bucket.
Is there any opportunity to separate out what funds the CPO program from what funds other aspects of community engagement?
So it is pretty separated now, with the exception of $80,000 of professional services, which is contract money. So the staff, the staff time, the personnel costs that are associated to the CPO CCI budget, they only fund, that is the 0.25 FTE that each of those coordinators use to liaise with their CPOs and CCI. The time that coordinators spend on civic leadership training, coordinating those contracts, that comes out of the time that they have designated to the main community engagement budget. So with the exception of that $80,000, like no supplies or materials or services or
Right.
anything else come from the CPO bucket, they all come from the general community engagement bucket.
Very good. Thank you for that. We did do a kind of casual computation of how much time the CPO leaders contribute, and it's somewhere between 1.5 and 2 full-time equivalent employees worth of time. I don't know. I haven't heard any response back to that letter, but Jerry Willie is always asking, Commissioner Willie is always asking, what do we get for this money? And just the number of people that attend meetings is only sort of an after effect. What we realize is that you get a lot of serious community outreach being done by the CPO leaders, and frankly, a lot of what CPO leaders do is anger management of people that come in because they're mad about something and they're upset, and so we have to point their anger either to something useful or to kind of talk them down out of a tree. Fran, what do you got?
I think one other addition, I think our value add is we actually, by disseminating information to our communities, we defer an awful lot of inquiries to various agencies within Washington County. And I don't know if that's quantified, but I know that, for instance, I myself reduced the number of inquiries to LUT by just dissemination of information, which is, I know that there are websites and things of that nature, but what we do is a lot of cases is simplify the pages and pages of detail to something that says, what does this mean to you, our neighbors in this particular area? And I think that's a value add that I'm not sure that, how do we communicate that to the commissioners to help with this program? Because we just we've been asking for years and years and years, and it just, the head count, just the resource just keeps diminishing or get reallocating.
Which heads?
And I think we need to balance these out.
Which resource gets?
Oh, I'm talking about the Office of the Community Engagement, the allocation to the CPO program. If you think about how much we do to defer from agencies all across the board, it's a huge amount. And even reducing litigation, because as you said, the anger management and providing accurate, timely information is really critical to avoid litigation. How do we communicate that to those that decide on the budget?
So you did write a letter, which is the main way to communicate to the board, right? Like public comment and submitting written comments to them.
I think maybe getting the agencies to also write the staff to write a letter in terms of our, I want to say, support, what we do, our contributions.
Okay,
and if we could do a numerical number, that would probably help. So just a thought, folks, for the leadership tomorrow.
It's noted. Thank you, Fran. That's an insightful comment. Amanda, I think you've covered the subjects. The one thing that I wanted to do you feel that you covered the subjects that were okay? To take up a little bit of time, it dovetails into the strategic plan agenda topic coming up next, which is that the goals for the different departments laid out in the strategic plan overview is really useful. But in talking with some CCI leaders, the OAICE goal only talks about who is able to participate, and we would like to submit that the bigger issue is what can anybody be engaged in. And so when I read through the goal, it got down to the very end, and and it talked about people, let's see, that you get culturally and linguistically appropriate access to the county's services, programs, and opportunities to participate in decision-making. And I would argue that the opportunities to participate in decision-making is actually the most important thing, even regarding how important it is that we give everybody a chance to be involved. If there isn't a chance to be usefully involved, then people aren't going to come forward. And so I would like to ask we'll put that on the steering committee meeting for tomorrow, to encourage the OEICE goal to have a little bit more reference to what and how people participate, of anybody in part, because if you can't participate, then it doesn't do any good to get a lot of different people trying to. So
Yeah.
anybody have a thought?
I would encourage you to share your comments with Danny. I think as far as I am aware, I think the board has approved the goals, but I could be wrong about where we're at in that process for sure. To me, it sort of feels like the what and how is it is second tier to this very basic, like, do you even know there's an opportunity happening? And you might not know that if the county business and doesn't happen in a language or in a way that you can understand. And so, but I encourage you to share your thoughts with Danny.
So asking about the operational aspects of actually making the aspirations operational is something that do you have any advice for us as to, now that we have the structure of how we're going to go about it, when would we be able to make useful comments about actual things that can be done?
I don't actually know what that I don't know if there's an immediate next step timeline for that piece, Bruce. You know, as I think Danny mentioned, like this first version of the strategic plan revision is kind of let's get the structure in order and then launch this much more comprehensive version in future years. So I don't know. I know she was presenting an update on work session today, and I didn't catch the whole thing. So I don't know how it ended. If the board, you know, I don't know if the board said this is great and we're good for now, or if they said come back with, you know, X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I didn't catch it either. Paul, what do you got?
Well, I'm thinking that at the risk of making mistakes about how we do things, we need to act regardless of whether we get direction or not. And in the absence of actual direction, then we need to look at what is our real mission as a group? How do we get things done? We can write letters. That's one of the options. We can perhaps talk to media and say, okay, here's something that's not going right, and what things that we might be doing that would usher things around along. But whatever it is, we need to be able to act. And in absence of acting, we're just in the waiting game. Wait for this, wait for that. Now, I have no problem with waiting for my coffee pot to finish perking coffee, but when it comes to some of these things, I'm not willing to wait.
I see that Fran has a question about what she could take back to the LCDs, or to Land Conservation and Development Commission's Community Involvement Advisory Committee. And I think that the legal review report that will come out someday is something that CIAC should have to digest. I don't think that there's anything in the interim other than just sort of, hails of activities that you can really take back. Okay, that I think concluded everything I have. Does anybody else have a comment on Amanda's sharing or on the strategic plan? If you haven't looked through the minutes that ACA sent out, of the notes that ACA and Amanda took, I thought that they captured everything pretty well. Mary, what do you got?
Question for Amanda about the status of the mailed agendas. There was some, at one point there was a talk about the agendas no longer being mailed because of budget considerations, unless there was a specific request from people. Has that been put in place, or what's the status of that?
Yeah, so what we had been saying is that we would stop mailing them in January. We are mailing them to a few folks, a handful of the rural CPOs of folks who have asked for that. But for the most part, we're not mailing them out.
So is there a way to submit a request to get a mailed agenda? And I know, as a CPO leader, I really appreciated getting the mailed agendas so I could post them places. And, sure, I can print them out, but I only have black and white printer. The color ones are much more eye-catching. And it's always nice to have a handful of those for an in-person meeting. So are those no longer going to be mailed?
If you want agendas for an in-person meeting, we can send those to you if we have them in time from you. If you want an agenda to be mailed to you, and I guess we would need to think about this a little bit. I would need to think about this a little bit about how this will work, because we are no longer carrying a contract with a print and mail service place, since we aren't mailing as many agendas. So I think we had I don't know the exact number. I want to say like 9,000 people subscribed to the mailing list. Most of those people have email addresses, so that's how the agendas are sent out. Like, you can get the actual numbers of what we're not doing, but we aren't carrying a contract with that. So we are, when we get requests to mail them, we're just doing that in-house from the office. And so, yes, for meetings, I'm happy to send you some printed agendas so that you don't have to print those. For in-person meetings, happy to send you some printed agendas. I know we used to do that in olden times, pre-pandemic. Send out a packet.
Oh, come on, let's not talk about olden times.
Send out a packet to CPO leader, or take them to meetings if staff are going to the meetings. We're happy to continue that practice. And then mailing them to people in the rurals who don't have reliable internet.
Was there official notice that went out to CPO leaders? Are all CPO leaders aware that is what the current plan is?
Yes. So I think as early as Marcus's time, the emails were sent out. Christina also sent out emails. Sam sent out emails, and then I know I mentioned it in this forum, and other. I know Christina mentioned it at CCI as well, but and we talked about it for months leading up to January. I know initially the budget plan was to do it starting at the beginning of last fiscal year. We didn't do that because we didn't feel like we'd given adequate notice. And so we postponed that to January. And now that practice has started.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have had a pretty good conversation here. Thank you very much, Amanda, for coming and visiting with us. I think it's time to move on to the next subject. And so appreciate you showing up again and best of luck in everything that you're endeavoring to do.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. Thanks, everyone. And I'll keep you posted as we learn more about all the things.
Okay,
All
thanks.
right. Bye.
All right. So the next subject kind of you start pulling on it and it goes into the realm of the CCI could really use a transportation subcommittee to look at regional transportation issues. Um, uh, it's ironic that for a state with as highly vaunted land use laws as we have, we've been unable to craft a regional transportation plan infrastructure that actually keeps up with the number of houses and businesses that are being built. So with that as a preface, Gretchen, would you say a few words from your perspective about the Tile Flat Road situation?
Hi, everybody. I have been a transportation junkie for many years and served on two different long-range planning committees for transportation for the county. I did not serve on the most recent one. As far as what's going on with Tile Flat, an issue for both Tigard with River Terrace and King City, which of course also goes to Roy Rogers. The level of traffic on Roy Rogers is already bad, and it is the only north-south road that is available since we didn't get the West Side bypass built.
Or or properly, we didn't complete the ring road transportation system that housing needed.
Yes. And as Bruce said, we are notorious for doing land use planning and building without having done the transportation planning up front. And we have a real problem down in this part of the county, as I mentioned. I have to meander on country roads if I want to get to Beaverton or to Hillsborough, etc. But as far as the specifics of Tile Flat, there have been discussions of extending Tile Flat Road in some way, shape, or form to eventually get over to Roy Rogers Road at some point. And so there was a proposal put together to create a study committee to look at what the possibilities are. There has been some opposition. A lot of that land came out of the process in 0809 as undesignated. Some of it's rural. Anyway, and it's now a few weeks ago. I can't remember the exact date now. There was a meeting and discussion on the issue. The questions were led by Chair Harrington. She asked a lot of pointed questions, including some of the questions that I've heard Fran raise in meetings and others. And eventually, the decision was brought to a vote, and it was a 4-1 decision to go ahead and create a study committee so that the issue could be looked at, because they felt it was important with all of the development that's going to be going on and with the increase in traffic that we've already seen on Roy Rogers Road, that we needed more connectivity for the Tigard King City area to be able to move north. So it was approved.
So my understanding is that Roy Rogers himself was the one dissenting vote.
Yes, he was.
And could you explain what the basis of his dissent was?
His dissent was based on the fact that they didn't have a specific route that they thought it should go.
So he wasn't opposed to the plan. He
He wanted more specifics. He was very clear in the meeting. He wanted more specifics.
Fran, you got your hand up.
My wonderful colleague here, Ken Seymour, spent years with me formulating what we called Around the Mountain, which is the proposed road of Tile Flat for a safe all-weather route for what is now 60,000 new residents around the high-growth community. They're already there. So we've been working on this since 2014, and I've been following up with LUT consistently. And I have testified, I was the only person to speak up at the most recent meeting in favor of the 882. They had 25 to 30 people testifying before the board to block it. And 882 is simply yet another study. And the reason I raised the issue with Bruce about, I think we need to resurrect the transportation subcommittee is because of something similar to this. And Gretchen, you're probably already aware that Thousand Friends has now issued a
Notice
of
litigation.
intent to appeal.
Yes,
I know.
appeal for this study to continue. In regard to Roy's point, and I believe this is one of these problems of not in my backyard. Roy's point was that the route, one of the possible routes south of Shoals Ferry had to do with a specific street, which he didn't feel was an appropriate street to be included in this particular study. And my position about this particular ordinance, but we also, as Bruce brought up in some conversations with me, is that we also have an area around North Plains and various other areas where we're trying to protect natural resources while we're still trying to provide transportation for these many, many people who come in. And I disagree with you, Gretchen. I think that land use and transportation has been trying for years to do these things, and they keep getting hit with litigation to stop this stuff. We had a Washington County transportation future study, which took several years and millions of dollars. We had the Cooper Mountain transportation study, which I was on as well. Took years, lots of millions of dollars, and each of these keep getting stopped by litigation by environmental groups specifically. I'd like to try to play this pragmatic environmentalist role, and I've been trying to work with Tualatin River Keepers. I've asked Miki Blizzard, who's the chair, co-chaired, whatever, of Thousand Friends, to see if there's some way that we and people who want to protect the environment can also come up with pragmatic approaches. So meet each other, because if we keep going binary, either black or white, eventually the thing is going to explode, and we're going to plow through the most critical corridors and connectivity that we need, just because people are getting killed on the roads that we currently have, which are unsafe. So that's my long story, but all this culminates in, I really believe that we as a group need to look at this and come up with ideas, processes, whatever we want to propose to find the pragmatic resolution to our transportation problem. Because LUT has spent, and the county has spent millions on these studies, but we need another study. We can't just stop at the 882 and say no more study. That just cuts it off at the knees. Anyway, that's my long story. Thank you, Ken, for participating.
I have been participating, as I said, when I was in Tigard, we looked at this area. It was part of our long-term transportation study, but the county just ignored what we were doing. So, and when we did our transportation study for the expansion of King City, this was also an issue that was discussed. So I'm very aware of what's going, and I appreciate what you've been up to, and I hope you appreciate what I've been working on. It's an issue that should have been addressed years ago, but
Okay,
we are here where we are.
Jim,
So
what do you got?
I believe that the position that Roy Rogers took was influenced by the fact that the city of Tigard opposed the ordinance.
What was the basis for Tigard's opposal
Um,
position?
yeah,
Fran?
so, yeah, not to go into long detail, whatever it is, but the night before the hearing, the mayor of Tigard called Catherine Harrington. She said that in the meeting to say that, as we all know, Tigard has been allowed this land swap to have the swath of land added for River Terrace 2. And so all the previous studies had assumed that there would be this avenue available. And now Tigard has overlaid a new community plan on top of the planned transportation approach that's been in place for years. And my problem is there are wonderful natural resources in there which need to be protected. But the whole thing is another one of these, not in my backyard. I want to superimpose this new plan on an existing transportation plan that's been in place for 20 years. And you can't do this. And that, I mean, that was made very clear in the commissioners' meeting that this was you can't do this. So one of the things I want to also add in this transportation subcommittee is what happens when you have transportation plans in place and now we have UGB expansion and new communities want to go and supersede existing transportation plans for the greater community, because that's why we don't get anything done is that, okay, these plans get superseded. So Jim, in response, it was the mayor of Tigard specifically, she has a wonderful idea of a total living in this little island where people can bike and ride within the community. But if they have to go to work, they're going to get right on Roy Rogers again, like everybody else.
Fran, the mayor and the newer council has kind of thrown all the planning that was done when I was on the Tigard Council out the window. And unfortunately, they left King City in the dark. The first time we heard about all this was when the mayor called Catherine. And as I said, King City should have been part of any discussions going on, but that's just inner city politics at
Yeah.
work.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, Bruce, is this is just a dialogue between Gretchen and myself at this moment. First time I known that Gretchen was even interested in Ordinance 882, but here's the scoop. What I'd like to do is find out what the rest of the CCI leadership is interested in this topic for the region, for the county. And if so, maybe for the steering committee tomorrow, you could talk about how we might want to move forward as a group on this topic, because it's not just one CPO or another CPO being affected. It's many of us, especially with the CHIPS Act and all this other stuff, we're going to be hammered, and the HPAC, et cetera.
It will be on the steering committee meeting agenda tomorrow. Thank you.
I volunteer to be on the committee.
I do too.
Okay. You'd have a hard time getting off. Ken, what do you got?
Well, yeah, I just wanted to reiterate what Fran said, that, you know, this whole plan was to try and reduce traffic on 175th, which is already very congested. Just that's about the only way you can get over the mountain to get to Tigard,
Right.
you know, from the north side. So I don't even have any idea. I haven't, you know, I read the appeal that the Thousand Friends of Oregon filed, but there's no detail in there about what specifically they're against.
No, there isn't.
Yeah, so I mean, we need to dig into that, and I'd like to be on this discussion tomorrow if there is one. So,
Okay.
so that's the whole plan, like Fran mentioned, was to try and mitigate a lot of the traffic that's going over the hill. 175th just can't handle much more traffic, and part of that plan was to diversify the route to get around the mountain and facilitate traffic going from Tigard to the Hillsborough area. So that's the deal.
Okay, thank you.
And there's one other issue that I think is important. 175th in going up over the hill there it's high, you get ice, snow, and having, as Fran mentioned, a lower elevation option is really important.
Thank you. Jim, what do you got?
I want to reiterate that the Thousand Friends of Oregon, with what they sent out today to the county and to all the service list, was simply a notice of intent to appeal. It doesn't have the details. I would actually like to see make a motion that the CCI get involved in this and support the appeal.
Well, we would need to know why it's being appealed. On the surface of it, my personal position, I am not in favor of a vague appeal. Mary, what do you got?
I would push for a motion to oppose the appeal. So I think, you know, to move forward with, we're either going to support it or not support it. It's too early to have CCI take a position.
I would agree with that. Ken, what do you got?
Yeah, just real quick here. Thousand Friends of Oregon hasn't come to us at all for any comments or suggestions or anything. That's just kind of, I don't know if they went to any other CPLs, but they didn't certainly come to CPL 6 for any discussions.
Thank you. Fran.
I'd like to get on the agenda for a walkthrough of the situation before, or whether it be the steering committee or to the CCI before you make a position on either the pro or cons about this, because there certainly are pros and cons. But I think we need to give you the full information. And it would be good to have, I could collaborate with Jim Long if he's willing to review a document that I put together, which explains the natural resource jeopardies as well as wildlife crossings, et cetera, that we would need to have. And by the by, I'm really upset that Thousand Friends isn't pushing the Bankston Preserve the way that they're pushing the 882, because these are two very similar situations. Sorry, Gretchen, but Bankston Preserve is an established estuary with paid for by all of us.
So it feels to me like coming up with a position tomorrow at the steering committee is too much, and paying more attention to this in March would be a good thing to do. So that's my vote.
Well,
Mary.
we'd have, Bruce, we'd have to wait until Thousand Friends file some paperwork, and that will,
Right.
the first thing that has to happen is the request for all the documents to be submitted. And it won't happen immediately. It could be 2 or 3 months before the paperwork gets filed.
Okay, good point. Mary.
Should we consider inviting Thousand Friends to a meeting to explain their position?
I think that would be very useful.
I would propose discussing them with a separate group first, the Transportation Committee.
Probably a good move. Jim, what do you got?
The opposition to this ordinance is pretty strong. There's CPO opposition to it, Safe Helvetia's opposition to it. There's a number of other groups, and we can, try and boil that down. But if Fran is making a presentation, Gretchen made a presentation, we need to hear the other side. It's very true of why people aren't interested in this. Obviously, it's going to take away some farmland, take away some wildlife habitat. It's the cart before the horse. How did we get in this problem? Should that have been taken care of earlier? I'm not in favor of the West Side bypass or any of that. So we need to calm down and look at what reasons there are to oppose this plan. And I'd be glad and happy to put together some information about that.
Okay. Mary,
I do have some critical wildlife mappings, details of the tiger, City Terrace 2, everything that we could compile. If whoever's interested, just give me a call. Send me a mail.
How come I got knocked off?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Mayor, Virginia, I got knocked off for some reason and I had to come back on, so.
We have one person in the attendees. Mary Lou, what do you got?
Well, I'm not in the attendees.
No,
I'm a participant, but I don't think this group can make any sort of decisions one way or the other until we read the appeal.
I agree. I think we're all in agreement on that.
we haven't seen it, so we don't know exactly how they're going about this and what they're using for their evidence. And so, normally I would be supporting Thousand Friends of Oregon, but I don't know what is in this specific appeal. So we need to wait.
We will. Okay, Virginia, what do you got?
So all of this can be discussed tomorrow at the steering committee in terms of the approach, kind of where the ducks are hiding so that we can line them up. And, we can flap our lips and sing in the shower right now if we want to, but I think obviously, as Mary said, it's going to be a while, and let's gather our wits tomorrow at steering committee and figure out who and what we need to learn and find and so forth.
I think we're in violent agreement. Okay, Paul.
Well, I'm essentially in agreement on this, but I'm thinking that it would make sense for us to form some sort of a transportation committee for the purpose of study, if nothing else. But the other thing that I see that is become obvious, and that is coordination of plans. You can have a plan for land use, and you can have a plan for transportation, and you could have a plan for other resources. And if they're not coordinated together, they're not going to work. So,
well, and that's kind of the situation.
There also needs to be some planning that has to do with coordinating all the different plans.
I couldn't agree more, and it's ironic. Okay, we have a gentleman, Peter Hutala, it looks like, in the
land use. You can have a plan. You could have a plan for.
So, Aka, can you enable talking permitted? Peter, go ahead. I think if you're still
Does he
there.
know he needs to unmute?
Yeah. Peter,
Well,
have you unmuted?
There he comes.
You still don't hear me?
We can hear you now.
Oh, okay, great. I'm a candidate, but I'm more a citizen right now, and I'm sure that that 1,000 Friends would not be filing a notice of intent to sue unless they believe that there was some sort of procedural error or a substantive error that was made that they'll want, and they'll disclose that when it's time. And if you had a committee together to study the transportation problem here, that is, how do you get around this crescent of the county without putting in a new road? And how do you build a new road if it's not going to affect the the heat coming off of it? And many different areas. I suspect that they're claiming there was an inadequate analysis. And I appreciate all of you that are willing to answer. Yes. Anyway, and I'm just horrified actually by the idea of the West Side bypass coming into the middle of this. But that happens every now and then.
Well, I mean, uh, yeah, it would be interesting to have a debate, an actual debate about the completing the transportation system that the county needs. We call it the West Side bypass, but that's a pejorative phrasing. So, so we haven't heard the last of this yet, and we will certainly take it up when we know more about Thousand Friends, and having Thousand Friends come and talk about their intents would be very interesting here at the Washington County CCI. So anybody have anything else for the good of the order here in this particular subject? Well, then let's move on to the subcommittee reports. And but before we do that, we have had the last, I think November and December minutes have been out for review, and all the comments have been received and integrated. And so I'm looking for a motion to approve the November and December CCI minutes.
Bruce, I move approval of the November and December 2023 minutes as amended by various people.
I
Okay,
second that.
okay. Any discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All in favor, raise your hands in some fashion or another. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Virginia, I assume you're voting yes. 11. I see 11 people voting yes. Anybody, take your hands down. Anybody?
I don't think Peter's not a member, but from my.
No, I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I got 11 and independent of that. Anybody opposed to approving the blasted minutes? Okay, hearing none. We approve those minutes 11 to zip. Now we have the subcommittee reports, and Fran has a couple of things she's offered to do. These significant natural resources technical advisory committee update. Fran, you want to say a few words? Virginia, get your hand up. You want to say something?
No, I decided it can go in my subcommittee report. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, this is Jim Long's territory, but because it's a CCI SNR subcommittee, but not to steal your thunder, Jim, but just to let everyone know that on February 13th, Michelle Miller made a presentation to the CCI SNR subcommittee about the status of the Goal 5 project update. I'm on the technical advisory committee of that project as well. So I have posted her slides on our CCI shared drive if people would like to see her update. My 2 comments come from my technical advisory committee role. And the 2 comments are that one of the things that they're proposing is that new developments would require a ground truthing tree inventory if there is SNR in the SNR community territory. And I think having Tree Keepers has done a tree inventory, about 2,000 street trees in our inventory. And we find this to be an extremely time-consuming effort. It's great, but it's very time-consuming. And Matt Wellner and I should say, agree that we should come up with some other alternative besides either LiDAR is one way, which is a flyover, aerial view accounting, canopy and trees and stuff. And then ground truthing is a much more detailed level. And so what can we do to figure out what's a pragmatic way to get this? And not to let the cat out of the bag, I'm working on a proposal to create, identify, train, and certify citizen scientists who would be willing to do the ground truthing and mapping, because Tree Keepers, for instance, has the GPS equipment and the training, and we have liability insurance. And the idea would be that if, when a neighborhood meeting is, by the time the developer gets to that point, they could ask for this pro bono service of having local citizen scientists do the ground truthing. And that would be part of their inventory information that they would supply. And I already know of a number of different communities that are willing to do this, because if we care about our natural resources, we should be willing to step up to the bar. So I'm working on this proposal and see if I could put that in as an alternative. But that was one of the big issues, was how do you do ground truthing, an adequate tree inventory without making it so expensive for the developer that it's prohibitive. So that's one piece of it. And then there are a few other little things like that, but that's my big issue. And also to prioritize the high connectivity areas. They should have a higher rating than, for instance, this just being a natural resource area. They're a priority natural resource area. So that's my personal update about the Technical Advisory Committee. Goal 5. The separate one is the Beaverton Cooper Mountain Community Plan. Beaverton planners, and I've been working with them for years now, are coming up with an incredibly wonderful tree protection code, as well as a resource overlay concept to protect various areas on Cooper Mountain. For instance, how far you are from a stream, et cetera. And Mary Lou, I did add in your comment about the setbacks not being great enough. And so they are actually looking at that, and we're going to help them figure out what is the needed minimum setback, so that when somebody plants a tree, that it won't be invading the infrastructure, the sidewalks, all that other kind of stuff, because a lot of homeowners don't realize that. So that's kind of my, I've been working on the Beaverton Cooper Mountain Community Plan to protect our resources while still putting in those 5,000 homes, as well as the significant natural resource. And both of those, I can put those on the CCI shared drive if anybody's interested. And then I'm going to defer to Jim Long, and I could make a presentation if anybody wants it. But Jim Long will probably want to give an update from the CCI SNR subcommittee separately. This was my tree keepers.
Thank you. Gretchen, you got your hand up. Is there?
Yeah, I have a question, Fran, and it's your stuff is out of my area of expertise. When they do these analyses, do they do them in the summer? Do they do them in the winter? I mean, when you've got all the deciduous trees, whether they're, I'm just asking. I know it's a really basic question.
No. The consultants that LUT has engaged are, I think, are pretty good. I don't think that a lot of the stuff they're recommending is going to fly in the final recommendations. But so, for instance, there is a criteria that wetlands, for instance, need to be estimated in the spring. So that's not summertime when they're all dried up, and it's not wintertime when they're flooded. But there's a certain window of opportunity when you assess wetlands. And the same thing is true. There's a criteria for when you map trees. And one of the things that you're right, Gretchen, for instance, Tree Keepers has found it very challenging to do tree inventory in the winter when there aren't any leaves on the trees, because that's one of the criteria we use for identifying the specific species. So all this needs to be part of that process. But typically these developments aren't done in a month or two. The developer puts in his neighborhood meeting well in advance, and Mary Lou attends so many of those meetings. She can tell you that they're very, very detailed. But I don't know if that answered your question or not, but yeah, that's in there about when you do the various inspections.
Mary Lou?
The developers aren't required to assess the trees at all right now. And they don't assess, they don't care to assess, they just bulldoze. So that's where we are in unincorporated. I can't speak to Beaverton or Hillsborough or the cities that have some type of tree protection, but right now in the unincorporated areas where most of the building is going on, there is no requirement for saving any trees or counting any trees. Once in a while, you'll get a developer that will turn in as part of their application a tree assessment. Actually, I got him to do that on the 4 acres behind me. So they did count every tree and map it out. Then they bulldozed every one of them. So, that's the problem. But in the cities where there is some type of protection that would be helpful going forward.
I was reading that Tigard has chosen to just use Beaverton's tree protection code. So they aren't using their own, they're just using what's already established in Beaverton. But
Interesting.
it is certainly true that the county, the unincorporated areas don't. I mean, the excavation plan, the grading plan identifies the trees, but most of them are taken out. And having had trees whose roots were disturbed that disturbed 20 years ago, who fell over on my property now, I am not, you need to be careful about preserving big, tall fir trees. Unless you stay way away from the roots. Virginia, what do you got?
Hi. Fran, I was wondering if there's any place for the neighbors and or the citizen scientists to contribute to that tree study. I believe that the best way to get people to love stuff and want to preserve it is to get to know it.
Yeah, again, I'm letting the cat out of the bag early. This was my figment of my imagination because I saw this, again, this binary. You have the developers who absolutely would not agree to doing a tree inventory. Let's say 165 acres of a ground truthing inventory would be absolutely astronomical in cost. But we also don't want to do such a flyover that we miss everything because there was a lot of discussion about tree canopy versus tree count and, what do you count as a drip? A whole bunch of technical stuff involved there. And speaking to Gretchen's point about what time of year do you do the flyover? So like Mary mentioned, the recommendation is going from nothing today to something more extreme. And what I'm trying to do is figure out some way of getting this somewhere in between. How do we bridge this gap? That's kind of what I'm trying to do. I don't know if that helps everybody, but and yeah, that obviously the education part of it would be key. But we want to make sure we have certified folks who know what they're doing and that are acceptable, the results are acceptable by the developer as well as the county.
Okay, Virginia, your hand's up still or not? And that would leave Jim, Mr. Long.
Yes, Fran did a pretty good job on some of what we discussed at the Significant Natural Resources Committee meeting. But I want to point out that even though Michelle Miller came in and had a really nice bunch of slides, we're halfway through this process and we don't have any specifics. Mary Lou was just talking about trees and tree codes. And that's something that we should be doing here in this process for the next until October 1st. We need to have our input discussed and see it, but we haven't seen any specifics yet. And this is kind of frustrating because it takes a while to develop, to look at them and formulate ideas and come up with other modifications for them. I could talk about significant natural resources, but I have a lot of other things to talk about. I don't know if I should do it here or wait till the round table.
Well, I think that I don't know, there isn't going to be a re-envisioning subcommittee report this month. Virginia, did you have some communications subcommittee item that you wanted to bring up?
I do. I have a couple, but give me a second. I'm actually making fried rice and I can't leave it until about 2 minutes from now.
Huh? Okay. Mary, what do you got?
So Bruce, I'm not sure where you are in terms of sharing the letter that you sent to the
Oh.
board with the FTE
It was-
calculation.
It was
Was
linked to the agenda.
It was linked to the agenda, so everybody had access to that.
Yep.
It probably wouldn't hurt to mention that the letter did go out, and we're hoping for some sort of response.
Yeah.
But I encourage everybody to, if you haven't had a chance to read that, to please take some time and even input from leaders back to CCI could be valuable.
Yeah. Just the steering committee, which really was Mary and me, computed how much time the CPO leaders as a group spend per month working on CPO issues, and then same thing for the CCI. And it was great enough that I reduced some of the count for the CCI because I didn't want somebody to think that we were just padding our time. But it's somewhere around 2 full-time employees worth of effort is expended by CPO leaders on behalf of the community. And I thought that we just kind of glanced on that subject during Amanda's presentation, but the CPO program is a powerful force, even if nobody comes to our meetings. It was the gist of the letter. So Fran, what do you got?
Sorry to have so many topics, but I just remembered something else. Tomorrow, this is my tree keeper's role. Tomorrow, I facilitate a meeting between Oregon Department of Forestry, the Community Forestry Program, Urban Forestry, with Stephen Roberts, who's the director of LUT, and Aaron Mordell, who's the infrastructure planner, and Teresa Cherniak, who's the community planner. And the goal of the meeting, we've been trying this for a year. Scott Altenhoff is the ODF, Oregon Department of Forestry person, and he's been given a lot of money, $22 million from the IRA grant to divvy up across the state. And one of the projects, one of the line items I'm working on tomorrow is to fund a 3-year urban forester for Washington County, to have a contractor to work on that. And we have a target person that we know ODF likes and that Beaverton likes, et cetera. And so wish me luck. If anybody has any specific comments or things you want me to include, just know that we may be able to get the urban forester for Washington County funded. And all they have to do is accept.
Wow, good luck.
Yeah, thank you. And also there's a transit survey, online transit survey that I'm hoping people will get their communities to respond to. The end date is March 1, and I think I sent you the information, Bruce.
Yes.
But again, along our transportation issue, we have transit.
Okay. That then brings us up to the round table. And Jim, if you got
No, I'm ready.
Oh, okay. Oh, Virginia. Hi.
I'm very sorry. You know how it is when you're cooking. So I did not have a communications committee this week, either one. And I also managed to delete the recording of the January meeting. I was in YouTube and trying to figure everything out and organize things, and it showed me 2 copies of the January meeting. And so when I permanently deleted one, boy, they tell you, they make you fear for the rest of the world. So I deleted it, but it deleted both of the iterations that were there. So if anybody recorded it, if anybody has any ideas, I would be thrilled to follow through. I don't know if OEICE also records these or what. But anyway, the January meeting, this was the January CPO1 meeting. I'm sorry, not the CCI meeting. But on that note, I would sure like some help with all this stuff. I know the technical internet stuff defaults to me because I've been doing that for a while, but that doesn't mean I love it. And most of it is pretty easy to show someone else. So like starting the meeting, making sure the YouTube channels are all sorted, and I'm thrilled to give permission to somebody else. Maybe, it doesn't even have to be one of our CCI members. That we've got all these people in the attendees who I don't know who they are, but maybe one of them would like to help us, because this is communication. Having our great meetings available for other people to look at, or for people who couldn't come to the meeting, is communication. Of course, I see everything through a lens of communication, and that's why I get paid the big bucks. So the other thing that I want to share, which isn't strictly communications, but it kind of is that I have it from Melissa at LUT that they are busy rewriting the instructions for for neighborhood meetings. And I don't know if any of you actually, I'd love a show of hands among the panelists, the CCI members, who all goes to a neighborhood meeting once in a while. I am a huge fan of neighborhood meetings because it's sort of where the rubber first meets the road with development. If we can't change the big picture, at least we can get the neighbors to know what's going on and maybe tell us about roads and drainage and the things that the neighbors know. So ever since before, it's never been a good system. But then you know how critical I am of everything in the world. But then COVID came along, and they just sort of threw some spaghetti at the wall and called it their online neighborhood meeting rules, and then they kind of changed it. And so now they're really sitting back and looking at it. I found out about it because I asked whether we could have a 30-day notice period, because as a publisher of a monthly publication, if it's a 20-day period, very often it's too late for me to share it in the upcoming issue of the paper. Not that that's the end of the world or anything, but I asked Melissa if 10 more days would ruin anybody's plan. So that's when she told me that they were looking at revising these. And so I would commend anybody, and I don't have a link, to go and look at the current neighborhood meeting rules and to, ponder on your experience with them. And there's lots of things that have been controversial over the months and years since online meetings got common, in terms of documenting attendees, sending out notices. When you send out a print document with a Zoom link that has 47 characters in it, and that's all you have, big challenge. That's a barrier. And so I think one of the things I'll ask for is a QR code in those mailed notices. But there are many other things. So I'm just kind of letting everybody know, letting CCI know, to give that some thought. If you value neighborhood meetings and you have any comments at all about how they could be improved. My other topic, which Fran brought up, and is a item on my, I'll get to you in a minute, and an item on my, on Bruce will or something, on my to-do list, and it's something that I'd love to share with somebody else, is our shared documents folder. There are 2 of them. I organized one, but that's not the one everybody's using. And I didn't do the greatest job of organizing it, but I tried to pull some useful organizing principles into action, but I didn't get that far. And now everybody's using the other shared documents folder, which is very difficult. I would really love, again, to have some help organizing an ideal system for shared documents and then implementing that, because everything from very long time ago historical stuff that's useful to pertinent county documents to maps and plans and stuff, and all of the CCI letters and activities and statements and stuff, it all should be easy for us to find. And
I agree. So let's take this up at the steering committee tomorrow. That shared drive thing is driving.
A couple of people have their hands up. I don't know if they're asking me questions.
Well, I think Mary Lou wants to ask you a question or weigh in.
Yeah, back to your neighborhood meeting little talk. Lately, I would say within the last year, the neighborhood meetings are all pre-registration. So you get the notice on, if you have the land use and transportation thing that comes out every Friday, you get a notice of all of the neighborhood meetings all over the county, wherever they are. And then you have an opportunity to join those meetings. It used to be that the only people that heard about those meetings were within that 500-foot circle or whatever it is around the development, or 5,000, I don't know, however many feet.
500.
But yeah, those were the only people that got the notification in the mail. So now you if you signed up for the land use and transportation weekly update, it's in there. On Fridays, you look at the bottom of the thing and it tells you the future neighborhood meetings, and then it gives you the instructions on how to go. And it used to be that there was a live link on there. And you just could click that link. It was blue, you just click the link and join the meeting. Well, it's not that way now. You have to register for those meetings.
But now, some of them are in person, so that kicks that right out the window.
Well, not lately.
Yeah, we had one down in, anyway, we do.
I'm just saying most of them are virtual. And
that's why I want for all of us to have input on how they work. I don't want to.
And what you do is you click on the instructions, and then it tells you how to register. And then you register.
Oh, you type in a 47-digit. No.
You follow the directions. You click on in the case of the one I just did, it's a Ken Sandblast, and his company is in charge of the.
Yeah, but that's only if you get the email.
But
as far as the rest of the neighbors,
that's why I'm saying you have to. You have to get the land use and transportation.
I know, and that takes a motivated subset. I'd like to have us have better outreach. But anyway, Bruce is having a headache. So, Jim, did you have a question for me?
The thing of it is that you used to put them on the CPO number 1 update, but they aren't on there anymore.
Well, we don't have any control over the CPO news thing that goes out.
You don't?
No.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I disagree there, Bruce.
Well,
you can actually, if you actually create the list and provide it to OEICE staff, it will show up on
Okay,
the
fair enough.
on the
I
CPO.
disagree also. I think it's our only way to do things these days. We used to have a newsletter that we could put our local news for our local CPO, but that has been disappeared and all we get is an agenda. So my way of doing it, I stuff the agenda, I put in all the issues on the agenda so people are getting some news that way.
Right, but with the 20-day notice period, which the clock starts ticking when the notice, when the developer says we're going to have a community meeting, and then it's 20 days, and if it takes your mail 7 days to reach you, which it sometimes does, and you're on a monthly newsletter, all I'm saying is we need 30 days notice, and I don't think it's going to put any developers' panties in a twist.
So Virginia, I think that's a really good example to use. You know, Cedar Mill News is important, but if we say all of our agendas are on a monthly basis, and
Right.
our CPO newsletters are really our only way to communicate with our community,
Right.
we really need a longer lead time.
And when I found out that they were reevaluating the whole thing, I said, well, that's great. They said, we'll put that on our list. I said, well, I'm going to let the CCI know so that we can suggest some other things. I'm sure Melissa got a headache from that, but anyway. No,
Okay.
she's good. I take that back. But I do plead with everybody to try to get me some relief on all this technical stuff I do. Sometimes I like to go away and forget about CCI.
Don't you dare. Okay, Jim, I think you got the floor now. And what you do with it is your choice.
Unmute, Jim.
Sorry, I'll go back and start again. I want to take a little further on Virginia's comment. Virginia, we're all volunteers and we all are very busy and we don't have much time to help you. I've got about six different items I want to talk about quickly here. A month ago, maybe, I sent out a link to a video documentary about the land use history in Oregon, and it's very good. When it was shown in North Plains, the hall there was packed, over 130 people. But the most important thing I have to talk about here today are down in Salem, the legislative actions are happening, and there's some bills to change the land use laws. The governor's housing production advisory committee came up with a number of recommendations. One, to do away with SDCs so the developers don't have to pay SDCs. Another one would change the public hearings. Another one would allow the hearings officers to be not as objective, but hired by local jurisdictions. So there's a number of things in there that are very important to us in land use. But there's another one another bill, it's SB 4026-1, that suffered a gut and stuff on Friday afternoon. And I just got word of it today. But it's related to the committees for voice and annexation. You've heard me talk about North Plains, and the city is planning a major expansion of the urban growth boundary there. And the people stood up and said, hold it, let's get a vote on that. We used to be able to vote on things. So they got 350 signatures for a referendum to get it on the ballot. It's going to be on the ballot in May. But this legislation, gut and stuff that just happened, would take away that ability. It would be retroactive, go back for a year and a half. So I really think that this committee, and we can take it to the steering committee tomorrow, needs to make a statement that's pro-voters, pro-citizens able to communicate on things instead of anti-voters. We want to give citizen involvement is important, and having a vote is very important that way. it's that simple. There's some other legislation I'm working on. The city of Tigard now has a climate advisory team, CAT, which is talking about the climate emergency and trying to come up with ideas like that. And my next question is just when is the steering committee tomorrow?
At 11 o'clock.
Oh, I will be there.
I'll send out a link to the meeting and a rough agenda.
So I guess I'd like to make a see that if the steering committee finds that there's something important to comment on related to this House Bill 4026, are we empowered to do that? Is the steering committee empowered to do that? You know, again, I think it's a matter of taking a pro voter stance versus letting and what was it? It was the city of North Plains went and they're connected with the League of Oregon Cities, and they're the ones proposing this. And again, it's just a change in the land use, the ability of citizens to have input on land use. So I'd like to, I guess, make a motion that the steering committee is empowered if they want to take a stand on that bill.
I second.
That's in our bylaws.
Okay, well, the legislative session is happening. It's halfway through, so we need to be able to act quickly on some things. Any
Mary?
discussion?
Jim, are you willing to draft a letter the steering committee can work with?
Sure, I'll try and have it done tomorrow, but I can't guarantee, but I'll try to. I have the link. I'll send out some of what I got from the Save Helvetia folks about this. So you could, if you have time to update yourselves, you can do that. But otherwise, I'll be better versed tomorrow morning at the steering committee. Any other discussion? Paul?
Yeah. CPO 15 met on Thursday, and we talked a bit about the North Plains situation. And what was unclear was, is what going on is democratic or not? And apparently, if you're not actually within the city limits of North Plains, you don't really have a voice, regardless of whether what they intend to incorporate is strictly city or not. So in urban areas, people have a voice when it comes to these decision making, but a lot of the rural places, you don't have a voice at all. You're frozen out of any decision making whatsoever because you have no standing if you're not inside the boundaries of whatever you're looking at. And also a resident of whatever the entity is that's making the decision. So this is something I think we need to discuss further when it comes to our deliberations.
Okay, I made note of that. Bruce, you want to call a vote on the motion?
To take action? Sure. All in favor of explicitly enabling the steering committee to take action, raise your hands. Okay.
Thank you.
It's 11 to, anybody opposed? 11 to zip that the steering committee can take the action we decide on tomorrow. You know, it's interesting though that if I were given a choice to allow any urban expansion to happen, I might vote no. I don't want any urban expansion to happen anywhere in the county ever. But you know, we have a lot of pressure to accommodate people, and so I'm kind of like, if you ask people, do they want more people? Everybody's going to say no. but we're going to have more people. And so you got to accommodate those people, and just stacking them up in 20-story apartment buildings. I don't know. It just doesn't seem right. Anyway, yeah, we'll have a steering committee meeting tomorrow. Anybody else got Jim, are you got another one?
I'll hold off for a little bit.
Okay, we got 10 minutes left for this meeting. Anybody want to do a CPO activity? Oh, just so you all know, we are having the mayor of North Plains, Terry Lenahan, come and visit the CCI next month in March. And I have invited her to come and share her thoughts on a variety of subjects having to do with North Plains, including the urban growth boundary business, but not limited to that. Just, Paul, what do you got?
Just to, you are aware, in the case of CPO 50, down to just 4 meetings a year. And those 4 meetings are coordinated by 3 co-chairs for CPO 15. So each one of those co-chairs takes a meeting and organizes that meeting. And that's how we've been occurring. The only thing that fouls me up is they insisted on moving it to Thursdays, which is in direct competition with multiple things that I'm responsible for. So sometimes I can't come to the meeting.
I completely agree with that. I mean, tonight there was a Tigard City Council, there's also North Plains City Council, other meetings that I'd like to attend, and this conflicts with them. And maybe even the Board of Commissioners, I'm not sure.
I think we planned it so that we don't conflict with the Board of Commissioners on this Thursday or Tuesday.
The planning commission started meeting at 6 o'clock today. So it's not the board, it's the planning commission, which is an important group for us to work with.
Planning Commission meets on Wednesdays, not on Tuesdays.
All right, I made a mistake. Gives me something to do tomorrow.
Okay, Mary Lou, what do you got?
This is a quick question about North Plains. It used to be that North Plains was exactly 1 square mile. Is it still 1 square mile?
It's bigger.
As of when?
Oh,
Well,
there's been some annexations. There's a lot of growth out in the east part of out towards Jackson School Road. They even have a school out there.
And that's part of North.
Yeah, that's part of North Plains.
North Plains now?
Yeah, it's just, there's a sidewalk that connects it. There's a lot of space in between. And then there's some housing developments north of the old city.
Yeah.
But this major expansion, I mean, it's like more than double the size of the city, I believe. So.
yeah.
Bruce,
Yes, ma'am.
before we go, can I have a minute?
Sure, take it.
Okay. Some of you probably are aware that there's been a recall vote for 4 city councilors in King City. 2 of the councilors have been recalled, and the other 2 are too close. The votes haven't been called yet. So there's going to be turnover at least 2 seats on the city council. So there will be appointments made to fill out the terms of the folks that.
Who does the appointment?
The remaining members of the city council.
So the remaining members could reappoint the people who got thrown off?
I hadn't even thought of that. I don't think the people that have been recalled will be interested. There's some pretty hard feelings.
I can only imagine.
And I totally sympathize with the hard feelings.
Yeah.
So. And it's time for me to turn into a pump.
Okay, I will distract myself from working on the steering committee announcement. Ken, what do you have?
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to clarify, is the steering committee going to have the topic of tile flat, or is that a separate meeting?
That is a separate meeting as far as my notes go right now.
Okay. Well, that's one I was interested in, so just keep me in the loop there.
Let's kick that around a little bit. What can we do?
My understanding was that we'd chat about it at the steering committee meeting, and then a focused group could form on their own or from the steering committee or something like that.
Something like that. Mary?
Not to change the subject, but what is happening with the Climate Adaptation Committee?
Okay. Well,
Got rain on.
Nothing much is happening. There have been exchanges of articles about different points of view on climate change, and that's been the extent of it. As far as organizing efforts, there have further organizing efforts.
I've gotten fielded questions from people who are really interested, and I'm not really sure what to do with that information. Can I send them your direction, Paul? There's a lot of interest in this, but I guess I don't have a sense that things are coalescing into a group yet.
I didn't quite follow what you said there, coalescing or something like that.
Yeah, I don't see that it's actually coalescing into a group, that there's an it that I can direct people to.
Yeah, agree.
And I think there's a tremendous amount of interest, and I guess the question there is what can CCI do to help support you to get this to move forward into a group?
Well, part of it has to be that whatever we form is not dictated by any sort of propaganda that is media driven. My original focus was, what can we do to help people adapt to change, whatever the change is, not argue about what's causing change.
And I guess I'm not understanding why it's not moving forward. I mean, if that's what the focus of the group is, it should be, the next step is to start to meet.
Well, I would think that, but when people keep bringing up issues that are still not what you would call consensus, at least among those that are interested. If there's a consensus among those that are interested, then we have a basis for organizing. We can come with base principles of what we want to do.
And again, the question is there anything CCI can do to help support you in moving this forward?
Well, I think the CCI has already been doing it, because I've gotten messages from Fran, I've gotten messages from Bruce. any messages that are relevant to adapting to climate are something that need to be aware of. But when there's enough of those such that actually have something resembling critical mass, then I can see moving forward. But most of it is still contentious that I've seen. Doesn't exactly fit the category of adaptation because when you're talking about adaptation where you still have the mindset that climate is only caused by one thing or by a thing that's mainstream, then you're not going in a direction where it's just simple adaptation. As I said, I don't want to get involved in arguments over what causes climate change. And if you've already made up your mind on what causes climate change, you're not going to be a good fit for this group.
Okay, thanks.
I've got one thing I want some input on. It's a kind of a question. I'd like some suggestions. For our CPO and the eastern part of Tigard, we got split into three ones: King City, Fort Bull Mountain, and the Metzger East Tigard area. But one of our CPOs is inactive, 4B, but there is this major development with Riverview 2.0 happening. And I'd like to somehow have our CPO get some standing in there. I guess we just need to comment or whatever, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Of course, it works with the tile flat too. So I'm looking for a suggestion. It'd be nice to merge the two CPOs temporarily. It seems like a lot of work to do that. So what do we need to get standing? Just comment during the poll process. Anybody know?
I'm lost. You mean to combine CPO 4M and B?
Well, that was one of the discussions, but what I'm really interested in, but that'll take a lot of effort and time. But one thing I'm looking at is our CPO may want to provide input and make some comments, be able to have standing in case we wanted to appeal some decisions regarding the River Place development and application of development. So it's the standing thing was the most important thing at this point. Although
Jim, you need to file a letter at some point with the city. To give yourself standing, because that's where the application is.
Okay, thanks for the suggestion. Any other suggestions?
It would seem to me that the letter, you're really talking about two different kinds of letters when it comes right down to it. One is what your intent is, and the other is who are you going to associate with in order to accomplish that particular intent. And the letters that do that are a matter of formation. How do you form whatever it is entity that you want to form in order to go forward? And I would think that one of the things you need to do is declare your intent with the people that used to be in 4B, if that's possible. I don't know. And declare your intent with the county as well, so that they can either say yay or nay to what you're trying to do. As long as you're complying with bylaws of organizations, I don't see that there's really a problem. It's just a matter of putting in the energy necessary to make it happen.
Thank you. Anybody
Standing
else?
is with who? Is it standing with the city or is it standing with the county?
Standing with, well, in case it goes to the state, the Land Use Board of Appeals or other courts,
Well,
you need to have standing. You need to be participating throughout. And I wondered if there was a question, an issue that here, our CPO isn't the ones right there. So if we involved and bring in more of those members, if we invite those members in to discuss the thing, I think that's a good idea. So Paul, I appreciate your idea there, your suggestion. So,
but I'm lost on, there's decisions that are being made, but those are decisions at the city level or decisions at the county level?
Both.
Ah, okay.
I move we adjourn.
Fran has her hand up. Fran does not have a hand up.
Yes, it was long, it was a long time ago when Paul was talking about the climate subcommittee. Number one is, I'm not sure, are you saying that I am or am not a good candidate for the climate subcommittee? And you also have been fine tuning it to say climate adaptation specifically, and I thought it had a broader scope. So wanted to make sure that we address
My
that
intent
question.
was to Jack, you is ideas.
You're breaking up
about
really
what we're
bad,
going-
Paul. I didn't hear the first part of what you said.
Okay, when it comes to what we talk about, it's not people who can participate. As far as I'm concerned, anybody can participate. But if your mindset is focused and thing is it's not going to be able to contribute very effectively, because the point is adaptation techniques. That's what it comes down to. How do we adapt to changes that we find? And if the adaptation is conditional on your mindset about what causes climate change, it's not going to be very effective. If you find that, for example, certain areas now, because of climate change, are wetter than they used to be.
Okay, I
So
think
how do you
I'm
deal
gonna
with that?
wait, Paul. I'm gonna submit a letter to the CCI steering committee on my views about the
Okay.
subcommittee as you've defined it. Okay.
Okay.
Because I think it's very narrow in
Fine.
scope and
I welcome that.
not what I'd signed up for.
Nice, earnest conversation. Thank you.
So Bruce, can we have more of a conversation about the climate subcommittee at
Right now?
steering committee?
Yeah.
Or do we have
Sure.
like an agenda that's way too full?
I mean, I just quickly bashed out a loose agenda and sent it out a minute ago. We can, sure, let's talk about it.
So did Virginia have a motion to adjourn?
She did.
I like that idea.
Anybody opposed? No, I think we've done it. And we covered a lot of ground, kids, in a short 2 hours. And we still have 4 attendees. Thank you, attendees, for showing up. And if you got any thing you want to offer to the leadership, it's WACO CCI leaders@gmail.
Yes, and we'd love to hear from you again. Don't be strangers. Come back.
And please stay well, everybody. Please, please.
Okay.
Bye.
Adios.
Good night. Take care. Sleep
Good
well.
night.